Welcome to Saltwater Stories. Today, we're setting our sights on a creature of the warm ocean skies, a true marvel of the air.
Oh, definitely one of the most spectacular sights out there.
Imagine a bird with wings wider than you are tall, capable of staying aloft for weeks at a time, almost never touching down.
Weeks, maybe even months sometimes. It's incredible.
Picture the males displaying this brilliant flash of red to attract a partner. This incredible flyer even has a reputation for, well, let's say some cheeky behavior in the
Ah,
tropics.
yes, the pirates.
Exactly. Today, we're going to explore the fascinating world of the frigate bird.
And what's immediately striking is just how perfectly these birds are built for life above the waves. They belong to the family Frigatidae. You find them across the warmer oceans.
And they're instantly recognizable, aren't they? That silhouette.
Totally. That unique shape and their sheer mastery of flight. The fact that they spend the overwhelming majority of their lives flying. It's really something special.
I read that tracking studies have actually shown them staying continuously airborne for weeks, even months.
That's right.
Yeah.
It just makes you wonder, how is that even possible? What's the secret?
Months without landing, that sounds almost unbelievable for a bird. So yeah, what is the secret to their endurance?
Well, it really boils down to some remarkable adaptations. First off, you've got that enormous wingspan.
Huge, right? Like almost 8 feet in some cases.
Exactly. Up to 2.3 meters, sometimes even approaching 2.44 in the magnificent frigatebird. And this is combined with an incredibly low wing loading.
Wing loading. Explain that a bit.
Sure. Think of it like how much weight each square inch or square foot of the wing has to carry. Frigatebirds have these huge wings relative to their body weight, which is actually very light.
Okay.
So this means they can stay aloft with minimal effort, soaring on even the gentlest breezes. They also have what's called a high aspect ratio, those long, narrow wings, kind of like a glider airplane.
Ah, like an albatross almost.
A very similar principle, yeah.
Yeah.
It makes gliding incredibly efficient. They just hang up there.
So they're like nature's perfect gliders, built to stay airborne. But I also learned about a surprising weakness, something that seems totally at odds with this aerial expertise.
Ah, you mean the feathers. That's a really critical point.
Yeah, they aren't waterproof. How does that work for a seabird?
It seems crazy, right? Unlike most seabirds, frigatebirds produce very little oil from their preen gland, that gland birds use to groom and waterproof their feathers.
Right.
So if a frigatebird gets substantially wet, its feathers become waterlogged very quickly.
And that's a massive problem if you live over the ocean.
It's a huge problem.
Yeah.
They can't just rest on the surface of the water like a gull or an albatross. And if they accidentally ditch in the water or get too soaked by a wave or heavy rain,
They can't take off again.
it becomes incredibly difficult, often impossible. And sadly, that can lead to them drowning. This single limitation, this vulnerability, has been a major driving force in their evolution. It pushed them towards this extreme aerial efficiency.
They absolutely have to stay in the air.
Exactly. It's a fundamental constraint that shapes their entire lifestyle, how they hunt, where they rest, everything.
That's a fascinating puzzle. A seabird that can't really handle the sea itself. It definitely colors that pirate reputation, doesn't it? Where does that nickname actually come from?
Well, the name frigatebird itself has a nautical link. It comes from the French term la frégate, which referred to those fast warships.
Okay.
And this likely came about because people observed their impressive speed and agility in the air, and especially their habit of actively pursuing other birds, almost like these little aerial battles. Someone actually noted this way back in 1667.
Wow, that long ago. So the speed in the chase, that makes perfect sense. And what about man-o'-war bird? That sounds even more intimidating.
Yeah, that nickname really captures their powerful presence in the sky. That imposing silhouette with the long angled wings and that deeply forked tail. But it also directly points to their piratical behavior.
The stealing.
Right. Aggressively harassing other seabirds, boobies, terns, gulls, until they drop or even regurgitate their freshly caught meal.
Yikes.
And in Hawaii, they even have a specific name for this behavior. They're called iwa, which literally means thief.
Iwa, thief.
Yeah.
Okay, so these memorable nicknames really stem from this food stealing, this kleptoparasitism. But is that all they do for food? It seems like a pretty high effort, maybe low reward strategy sometimes.
That's a really key point you've hit on. While this piracy is certainly dramatic, and it's what they're famous for, it's actually often not their main way of feeding.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they have other, probably more reliable ways of finding a meal. And what's fascinating is how their inability to land on water has really shaped these other hunting techniques.
Right, okay, so if they can't land and stealing isn't the main course, how else do they eat?
Their primary hunting method is something called surface snatching.
Surface snatching.
Yeah. They fly incredibly low, just skimming inches above the water's surface, and they use that long hooked bill like a precision tool. They just pluck prey right from the surface,
What kind of prey?
mostly fish, especially flying fish, and also squid, things that come near the top. And get this, they can even snatch flying fish right out of the air as they leap out of the water to escape something else.
No way. Mid-air grab.
Yep. It requires incredible accuracy and timing, all while making sure they barely touch the water, maybe just dipping the bill or head in. Imagine trying to grab a slippery fish while flying past at speed.
Wow, that takes some serious skill. So they're actually more of an agile aerial hunter than just a simple pirate.
Precisely. That kleptoparasitism is part of their toolkit, definitely. But surface snatching is often the bread and butter. If you think about the bigger picture, this dietary flexibility is crucial for surviving in tropical oceans, which can often be relatively poor in nutrients compared to colder waters.
So they'll take jellyfish too. Other stuff near the surface.
Absolutely. Jellyfish, crustaceans like small crabs or plankton if they're swarming near the top, other mollusks, they're adaptable.
It's amazing how that limitation not being waterproof has actually driven them to develop these super specialized, highly skilled hunting techniques. Now, you mentioned they belong to a unique family. Tell me a bit more about their place in the bird world.
They do indeed. Frigatebirds make up the family Frigatidae. And what's remarkable is that this entire family contains only a single genus, Frigata,
Just one genus for the whole family.
just the one. And in the broader classification of birds, they belong to the order Suliformes. This order also includes some of their relatives, birds like boobies, gannets, cormorants, and darters.
Ah, okay, so they are related to birds we might be more familiar with, like those clumsy-footed boobies you see sometimes.
Exactly. Think of them as cousins in the big bird family tree.
How far back does their story go? Are they ancient birds?
Oh yes, their evolutionary history is quite ancient. We have fossil evidence dating back to the early Eocene epoch. That's around 50 million years ago.
50 million years.
Yeah. And what's particularly interesting is that these ancient frigatebirds from a group called Limnofrigata were actually quite different from the ones we see today.
How so?
Well, the fossils show they had shorter bills, longer legs, and, maybe most surprisingly, they seem to have lived in freshwater environments, not the ocean.
Wow, freshwater frigatebirds, that's a huge shift.
It really highlights the dramatic evolutionary journey they've taken over millions of years to become these highly specialized marine aerialists we know today. A total transformation.
Incredible. And how many different kinds or species of frigatebirds are soaring around today?
That's a good question. For a long time, there was actually some debate among scientists, based mainly on size differences. Some recognized only two main types.
Just two.
Yeah. But then in the early 20th century, an ornithologist named Gregory Matthews proposed 5 distinct species based on more detailed observations and analysis. And that's the classification we generally follow today.
Okay, so 5 it is. What are they?
We have the magnificent frigatebird, the great frigatebird, the lesser frigatebird, the ascension frigatebird, and the Christmas Island frigatebird.
Magnificent, great, lesser, ascension, Christmas Island. Got it. Now, to someone like me, maybe watching them way up high, they probably all look pretty similar, right? That classic dark-shaped, forked tail. How can you tell them apart?
That's where keen observation really comes in handy, especially if you get a closer look, perhaps near a breeding colony. While they all share that characteristic silhouette, there are subtle but key differences.
Like size.
Size is a big one, yes. The magnificent frigatebird is the largest, noticeably bigger than the others. The lesser, as its name suggests, is the smallest.
Okay. What else?
Plumage details are crucial, especially in the females and the young birds. The patterns of white on the underside of females vary between species.
Ah, so you need to look underneath.
Often, yes. And even the subtle iridescent sheen on the adult male's black feathers can be a clue. For instance, the male magnificent often shows a purplish gloss on its back feathers,
Purple sheen.
whereas the male great frigatebird tends to have more of a greenish sheen and is slightly smaller overall.
Green versus purple.
And the lesser frigatebird male has these quite distinctive white patches on its flanks. Near the wings, sometimes called axillary spurs.
Little white side patches.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And what about the ones named after islands Ascension and Christmas Island?
Those names point to something really important. They're very restricted breeding ranges. The ascension frigatebird breeds almost exclusively around Ascension Island in the South Atlantic.
Just one main spot.
Pretty much. And the Christmas Island frigatebird, similarly, only breeds on Christmas Island in the eastern Indian Ocean.
Wow. Does having such a tiny home base affect how these birds are doing conservation-wise?
Absolutely, it's a major factor. Both the Ascension and the Christmas Island frigatebirds are currently classified as vulnerable by the IUCN, the International Union for Conservation of Nature. Yes, precisely because having such small single breeding sites makes the entire species incredibly susceptible to any threats that might pop up in those specific locations. Think about invasive predators like rats or cats getting onto the island, or habitat destruction, or even a single major storm during breeding season.
That's a sobering thought. One big event in that one small place could be absolutely devastating for the whole species.
Exactly. It puts them in a precarious position.
What about the more widespread species then? The magnificent, great, and lesser. How are they faring? Are they doing okay?
Those species, because they're found across much larger areas of the tropical oceans, are currently listed as least concern on a global scale. Their wider distribution provides a bit of a buffer against localized threats.
So they're safe for now.
Globally, they're considered lower risk, but, and this is important, that doesn't mean all populations are thriving. Some specific populations within those widespread species are believed to be declining. There are still various challenges they face, like habitat disturbance, pollution, and changes in food availability, perhaps linked to overfishing.
So even the common ones need watching.
Definitely. And this is why being able to accurately identify the different species in the field is so vital. It helps scientists monitor their populations, track trends, and understand what threats they might be facing in different parts of their range. It's not just for bird enthusiasts. It's crucial for conservation.
It sounds like knowing your frigatebirds is really important work. Now, let's circle back to their amazing ability to stay airborne for so long. We talked about the wings and the lightweight. What about the rest of their physical makeup, their skeleton, muscles?
Their entire anatomy is it's a masterpiece of adaptation for flight. The skeleton is remarkably lightweight.
How light are we talking?
Get this, it makes up only about 5% of their total body weight. Sometimes the skeleton weighs less than the bird's feathers.
Less than the feathers. That's incredible. How is it strong enough?
The bones are highly pneumatic, meaning they're hollow and filled with air spaces, which reduces weight significantly. But they also have these internal struts, like tiny supports or trusses inside the bones, which provide strength and rigidity without adding much mass.
Wow. Like internal scaffolding.
Kinda, yeah. Plus, many of their bones are fused together, parts of the pelvis, vertebrae, even bones in the hand part of the wing, the legs, the shoulder area. This fusion creates a very rigid, strong frame needed to withstand the stresses of constant flight.
And the muscles, they must be powerful.
Oh, immensely powerful. The pectoral muscles, the ones that power the downstroke of the wings, are incredibly well developed. They can account for something like 50% of the bird's total weight, including its feathers.
Half their weight is flight muscle.
Roughly, yeah. It just shows you where their evolutionary investment has gone. Almost everything is geared towards maximizing aerial performance.
That's an incredible commitment to being airborne. What about their other distinctive features? That long bill, the forked tail, and their rather small feet.
Okay, let's take those. The bill is long, slender, but also sturdy, and it ends in that sharp, downward pointing hook.
Perfect for snatching.
Exactly. Perfect for snatching slippery prey like fish and squid from the surface, and also, as we discussed, very useful for grabbing onto other birds during those kleptoparasitic chases.
And the tail. It's so deeply forked.
That long, deeply forked tail acts like a highly sensitive and precise rudder. It gives them exceptional maneuverability in the air, allowing them to make really tight turns, quick adjustments, and steer with incredible finesse. You often see that characteristic W-shaped silhouette it creates in flight.
Yeah, you do. Okay, now the feet. They look tiny.
They're relatively small and seem quite weak compared to the rest of the bird. They have what are called toe-to-paw mate feet.
Don't you call me.
It means all four toes are connected by webbing, like you see in pelicans or cormorants. But in frigatebirds, the webbing is actually somewhat reduced.
So not great for swimming, I guess?
Definitely not. And it makes them quite clumsy on land. Walking is difficult and really ungainly for them. They mostly just shuffle awkwardly if they have to move on the ground.
But they perch. Okay.
Yes, despite the small legs, their toes are strong and well adapted for gripping branches firmly, so they can perch securely on trees or cliffs when they need to rest or nest.
So it really seems like every single part of them is designed for life in the sky, almost sacrificing ability on land or, crucially, in the water because of those feathers.
That's a perfect way to put it. Their evolution has honed them into supreme aerialists, but with significant trade-offs for other environments.
Now, one of the most visually striking things about frigate birds, especially if you see them up close or photos, is the difference between males and females. It's really quite noticeable, isn't it?
It absolutely is. They exhibit a strong degree of sexual dimorphism, meaning the males and females look quite different. This is actually more pronounced in frigate birds than in many other seabird families.
And unusually, the females are bigger, right?
That's correct. The females are consistently larger and heavier than the males, sometimes by a significant margin, up to 25% heavier in some cases.
Wow, 25%.
Yeah, this is what we call reversed sexual size dimorphism, where the female is the larger sex. It's somewhat unusual in the bird world, where often the males are bigger or flashier.
That is fascinating. You'd almost expect the males to be larger, especially with that incredible red pouch they show off. Why do you think the females ended up being the bigger ones?
That's a question scientists have looked into quite a bit. One leading idea is called the aerial agility hypothesis.
Aerial agility.
Okay. The thinking goes that smaller males might actually have an advantage because their smaller size gives them greater maneuverability in the air. This could be important during those intense aerial competitions, maybe when fighting over nesting materials, or especially during those elaborate courtship displays we'll talk about.
So smaller is better for showing off.
Potentially, yeah, for the complex aerial moves. Larger females, on the other hand, might benefit from their size in different ways. Maybe increased endurance for long foraging flights out at sea, or a greater capacity to carry food back when they're feeding their young.
Or maybe they're just better hunters.
That's possible too. Perhaps size relates to the type or size of prey they can handle efficiently. It's likely a combination of these different selective pressures, plus the forces of sexual selection, that has led to this size difference over evolutionary time.
So that makes a lot of sense when you think about their different roles in raising the young, which we'll get to. What about their plumage, the colors? The males are mostly black, but the females have those distinctive white markings underneath, right?
Exactly. Adult males are typically predominantly black, often with those beautiful iridescent sheens we mentioned, purplish in the magnificent, maybe greenish in the great, depending on the species and the light.
Very sleek.
Yes. Adult females are also largely dark above, but they have very distinctive white markings on their underparts. And the specific pattern of this white, whether it covers the throat, the chest, the belly, if it extends to the flanks, can be a key diagnostic feature for telling the different species of females apart.
So the female's pattern is a clue to the species.
A very important one. And even subtle things can help, like the color of their eye ring. Is it red or blue-gray? The color of the bill, the legs. These can differ between the sexes and among the species, too.
Lots of little details to look for.
Definitely. And then, to make it even more complex, the young immature birds have their own distinct plumages. They often have white or sometimes rusty brown heads and underparts, and it can take several years, maybe 8 to 11 years in great frigate birds, for them to gradually molt into their full adult plumage. So identifying young birds can be tricky too.
Wow, 8 to 11 years to look like an adult? That's a long time. And of course, we absolutely cannot talk about frigate birds without mentioning the male's incredible angular pouch. That bright scarlet red inflatable sac is just, well, it's breathtaking.
It truly is one of the most remarkable ornaments in the entire bird world.
Hey, Moa.
And it's present only in the males.
Only the guys get the balloon.
Only the guys. During the breeding season, this area of bare, highly elastic skin on their throat transforms into this vibrant scarlet balloon. When fully inflated, it can actually be larger than the bird's own head.
Bigger than his head. Seriously.
Seriously. Its primary purpose, maybe its only purpose, is visual signaling. It's all about attracting a mate. It's a key element in the intense process of sexual selection in these birds.
How does he inflate it? Does he blow it up?
He basically forces air from his respiratory system into the sac. He closes his beak and nostrils and directs expired air into it. It takes about 20 minutes or so to inflate it fully.
20 minutes. That's dedication.
It is. And then, once he is successfully paired with a female, the pouch slowly deflates, shrinks, and loses its bright red color. It's the absolute centerpiece of their elaborate courtship rituals.
So it's like this giant, pulsing, scarlet advertisement flashing, "Hey, ladies, look over here. I'm the best."
That's a pretty accurate description. What happens is males will gather in groups, sometimes small groups, sometimes dozens of them, on their chosen nesting territories, often in low bushes or trees, right near the coast or on islands.
A gathering of displaying males.
Exactly. It resembles what scientists call a leak mating system, where males aggregate purely to display for females. They perform these really elaborate routines for the females flying overhead.
What do the displays involve besides the giant red balloon?
Oh, it's a multimodal show. They inflate the pouch, obviously. They point their bills straight up towards the sky. They spread and vibrate or tremble their wings. They erect those iridescent neck feathers we talked about to catch the light. They might swivel their bodies, wag their heads back and forth, make these unique warbling or drumming sounds, and even clatter their bills together. It's a whole performance.
Wow, they pull out all the stops.
They really do. And the females will circle above, sometimes for days, carefully surveying the displaying males, assessing their pouches, their calls, their stamina, before eventually choosing a partner and landing beside him.
So the female is really in charge of choosing.
Very much so. Because there are often more males ready to breed than females at any given time, the competition among males is intense, and female choice is very strong. Research suggests females might be paying attention to things like the size of the inflated pouch, which could be indicated by the pitch or frequency of the male's drumming sounds, maybe lower sounds mean a bigger pouch, and also the overall vigor and persistence of his display. Is he a strong, healthy male?
It sounds like a real aerial spectacle. Intense competition and careful selection. And once a pair actually forms, what happens next? What does the actual breeding process look like? Do they build a proper nest?
Well, proper might be a strong word. Frigatebirds are colonial nesters, which means they gather in groups, sometimes very large, dense colonies with tens, hundreds, or even thousands of pairs nesting close together.
Where do they build these colonies?
Typically on remote, predator-free oceanic islands or sometimes in coastal mangrove forests. These locations offer safety from ground predators. Often they nest in mixed colonies alongside other seabirds like boobies or terns.
And the nest itself, you said maybe not proper.
Right. The nest site is often the very same perch, maybe a branch in a low tree or bush, where the male performed his initial courtship display. The male takes on the role of collecting nesting materials, things like sticks, twigs, vines, leaves, seaweed, grass, feathers, even bones or bits of plastic flotsam.
Resourceful.
Or maybe just opportunistic. He's also not above stealing nesting material directly from his neighbor's nests if he gets the chance. Kleptoparasitism extends to building supplies.
Huh. Of course it does. And the female builds.
Yes, the female arranges the materials that the male brings back into what's usually described as a rather flimsy, flat, or slightly hollow platform. It's not a deep cup or an elaborate structure, maybe only 9 to 14 inches across. Over time, it gets a bit more solid as it becomes cemented together with guano.
Charming. So a bit rickety then.
Can be, yeah. And interestingly, the female often has to guard the nest site quite diligently while the male is away gathering more stuff, precisely because other males might try to steal the materials she's already arranged.
Constant vigilance needed. How long does the whole process take from starting the nest to having a chick?
They have an exceptionally long reproductive cycle, truly one of the longest among all birds. After pairing and building the nest, which might take a couple of weeks, the female lays just a single, chalky whitish egg per breeding attempt.
Only one egg.
Only one. That's typical for birds with such a long rearing period. Laying more would likely be impossible to manage. And if that single egg is lost, say it falls from the flimsy nest or gets preyed upon, the pair bond often breaks down. The female might even try to re-nest later in the season, possibly with a different male.
High stakes for that one egg. Who incubates it?
Incubation is a shared responsibility. Both parents take turns sitting on the egg, and they undertake very long shifts. One parent might incubate continuously for 3 days, maybe up to 18 days in some observations, though 4 to 6 days per shift seems more typical, while the other goes off to forage far out at sea.
Days at a time without eating. That must be draining.
Hugely energetically demanding for the incubating bird. The total incubation period itself is also very long, lasting anywhere from 40 to over 60 days, often around 50 to 56 days. The egg is almost never left unattended.
And when the chick finally hatches, is it ready to go?
Oh, not at all. It hatches in what we call an altricial state, completely naked, blind, utterly helpless, and unable to regulate its own body temperature.
A tiny, helpless little thing.
Exactly. So for the first 2 to 6 weeks, the chick has to be constantly brooded, kept warm, and guarded by one of the parents. During this time, it starts to develop a covering of fluffy white downy feathers.
How do they feed it?
Both parents initially feed the chick. They do it via regurgitation. The chick actually sticks its head right down into the parent's throat to get the partially digested fish or squid.
Wow, head down the throat. Okay, how often do they get fed?
Feeding is quite frequent when the chick is very small, maybe several times a day. But as the chick grows larger and needs bigger meals, the feeding frequency decreases, perhaps only every day or even every 2 days towards the end of the nestling period.
And how long is that nestling period? When does it finally fly?
This is another remarkably long phase. The chick stays in or near the nest for about 5 to 6 months. That's around 150 to 185 days, or 20 to 24 weeks before it's finally capable of flight and fledges.
5 to 6 months in the nest.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It really is. But wait, it gets even longer. Even after the young bird finally takes its first flight, it remains dependent on its parents, especially the mother, for an incredibly extended period of post-fledging care.
Still needs feeding after it can fly.
Oh yes, for many months. We're talking up to a year or possibly even longer, making it a total period of parental dependence, potentially 15 months or more from hatching. It's one of the longest parental care periods known in the avian world.
15 months. Why so long?
That prolonged dependency is thought to be crucial for the young frigatebird to develop the extremely sophisticated foraging skills it needs to survive on its own, mastering that surface snatching, learning how to soar efficiently, maybe even figuring out the kleptoparasitism tricks. It takes a long time to become a proficient frigatebird hunter.
That makes sense. It's a complex skill set. Now, you mentioned the mother takes on more of the care later. What happens with the parents' roles?
There's often a disparity in parental investment, particularly in some of the larger species, like the magnificent and great frigatebirds. While both parents share incubation and the very early chick-rearing duties,
Yes.
the male parent typically deserts the nest and the chick much earlier than the female. This might happen around 11 to 12 weeks after the chick hatches. He just leaves.
He just leaves. The dad takes off.
In many cases, yes, after the male departs, the female assumes sole responsibility for feeding the rapidly growing chick all the way through fledging and that long post-fledging period. She actually has to increase her feeding rate to compensate for the male's absence.
Wow, mom does the heavy lifting for a long time then.
For a very long time. Although, interestingly, in the lesser frigatebird, where the size difference between males and females is less pronounced, some studies suggest both parents might share duties more equally, potentially staying together until the chick fledges. But that extended care, especially by the female in the larger species, has a big consequence.
Which is?
Because the total investment in raising a single chick is so enormous, taking well over a year from egg-laying to independence. Successful breeding pairs typically only manage to breed every other year. They breed biennially.
Biens every 2 years.
Right. They simply can't recover condition and start another breeding attempt the very next year after pouring so much energy into the previous chick. The males, however, because they often leave much earlier.
They might be able to breed again the next year.
Potentially, yes. Since their investment ended sooner, they might be able to find a new mate and attempt to breed annually, while the female is still busy raising the chick from the previous year. It reflects these different strategies for maximizing lifetime reproductive success, given the high costs of raising that single chick.
That's fascinating. Different strategies for moms and dads. And it also explains why they take so long to mature, right? Those 8, 11 years you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. Given the complexity of breeding and the huge investment required, they likely don't even attempt to breed until they are several years old, probably fully sexually mature and in their full adult plumage.
Okay, so we've covered their amazing flight, how they eat, how they look, and this incredibly long breeding cycle. Let's think about their role in the bigger picture. Where do they fit in the ocean ecosystem?
They occupy a pretty high position in the food web of tropical marine ecosystems. They're definitely top predators in their own way.
Primarily eating fish and squid from the surface.
Primarily, yes. Those surface-dwelling fish, especially flying fish, along with squid, jellyfish, and some crustaceans, are the mainstays. But they're also predators in other ways.
Like what?
Well, they're known to prey on the eggs, and especially the newly hatched chicks of other seabirds, raiding colonies of terns, boobies, petrels, shearwaters, sometimes even their own species if the opportunity arises.
Oh, wow, so they raid other birds' nests.
They can, yes. And another significant one is preying on newly hatched sea turtles as they make that dangerous dash from the nest down to the water. Frigatebirds can just swoop down and snatch them right off the beach.
Oh, poor baby turtles. They have it tough already.
They really do. Frigatebirds are also significant scavengers.
Scavengers, too.
Oh, yes. They'll readily follow fishing boats to grab discarded fish scraps or offal thrown overboard. They'll scavenge near docks, fish processing plants, sometimes even sewage outlets if edible scraps are available. In areas with things like prawn fisheries, the discarded bycatch can actually make up a majority of their diet sometimes.
So very opportunistic then. Predators, pirates, and scavengers.
Extremely opportunistic. That dietary flexibility is really key to their success in these often challenging marine environments.
Do adult frigate birds have predators themselves?
Once they're adults and airborne, they have very few natural predators, maybe large sharks or other big predatory fish if they were unlucky enough to end up in the water, but generally they're pretty safe. The main threats come when they're eggs or nestlings. Introduced mammals on breeding islands, things like rats, cats, pigs, can be devastating to colonies. And historically, humans have harvested them too.
Right, and they must interact a lot with other seabirds, not just as predators or victims of piracy.
Absolutely. They often share breeding colonies and foraging areas with a diverse range of other seabirds, leading to complex interactions. There's competition for food, obviously, and also for good nesting sites.
How much impact does their piracy actually have on the birds they steal from?
That's a good question. While the success rate of any individual kleptoparasitic attack might actually be quite low, sometimes less than 10%, though it can be higher in certain situations, maybe up to 40%.
Well, they often fail.
Often, yes. It takes a lot of energy to chase another bird down. But the cumulative impact on the host populations can still be substantial. Constantly being harassed increases stress, it disrupts their own foraging and breeding activities, and it forces them to expend extra energy either escaping or finding replacement food. It can definitely affect the fitness and reproductive success of the birds they target.
So it's more than just an occasional annoyance for the victims.
It can be, especially in areas with high frigate bird densities or during critical times like chick rearing for the host species. There's even some concern that this close interaction during piracy attempts could potentially facilitate the transmission of diseases like avian influenza between different seabird species.
Interesting point. And what about competition? Are they competing with other birds for the same surface fish?
There's almost certainly competition, both among the different frigate bird species where their ranges overlap, and between frigate birds and other surface-feeding birds like terns or shearwaters. Studies using things like stable isotope analysis, which can tell you about an animal's diet, suggest there might be some resource partitioning.
Resource partitioning, meaning they specialize a bit.
Yeah, maybe one species focuses slightly more offshore or targets slightly different sizes or types of prey, especially during the breeding season when food demands are high. Body size differences likely play a role here too. The larger species might take larger prey.
But they also work together sometimes, right? In those big feeding flocks.
Yes, that's another key interaction. Frigate birds often participate in multi-species foraging flocks. You'll see them associating with terns, shearwaters, boobies, often gathering over areas where subsurface predators like tuna or dolphins are driving smaller fish towards the surface.
Ah, the tuna connection. I read about that.
It's a classic example of facilitation. The actions of the tuna and dolphins make food accessible for the birds. Following these predators significantly enhances the frigate bird's foraging efficiency. It's much easier than just searching the vast open ocean on their own.
So they rely on the tuna.
Some researchers suggest they might be quite dependent on these large predators to concentrate prey near the surface, especially in the more oceanic parts of their range. And this leads to another important role they play.
Which is?
Their role as indicator species.
Indicator species. How so?
Well, seabirds in general are often considered valuable bioindicators of marine ecosystem health. They're typically high up in the food web, they range widely, they live long lives, and they rely on specific prey resources. So changes in their populations, their breeding success, or their diet can reflect broader changes happening in the ocean environment.
Like changes in fish stocks or pollution?
Exactly. Things like prey availability, pollution levels, the impacts of climate change. These can all show up in seabird populations. And frigate birds are particularly relevant here because of that strong association with predators like tuna.
Because if the tuna aren't there,
then the frigate birds might have a much harder time finding food. Changes in frigate bird foraging success or shifts in their diet could potentially signal changes in the abundance or distribution of tuna and other large predatory fish.
so monitoring frigate birds could give us clues about the health of tuna populations.
It's one piece of the puzzle, yes. Given that many tuna populations are under pressure from overfishing, watching the frigate birds that depend on them could provide an early warning signal for trouble brewing deeper in the pelagic ecosystem. It highlights how interconnected everything is out there.
That's a really important connection. Let's talk about their distribution more broadly. Where exactly do we find these birds around the world?
They have what we call a pantropical and subtropical distribution. You find them across the warmer parts of the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans, generally staying between about 25 degrees north and 25 degrees south latitude.
So circling the globe in the warm zones.
Pretty much. But within that, the different species have different ranges. Some are incredibly widespread.
Like which ones?
The magnificent frigatebird is found throughout the tropical Americas, on both the Pacific and Atlantic coasts, and even has a population way out at the Cape Verde Islands off Africa. The great frigatebird covers vast areas of the tropical Pacific and Indian Oceans, with a small outpost in the South Atlantic too. And the lesser frigatebird is also widespread across the tropical Indian and Pacific.
Okay, so those three are the real globetrotters.
Relatively speaking, yes. Then you have the two we mentioned earlier with much more restricted ranges.
Right, Ascension and Christmas Island.
Exactly. The Ascension frigatebird breeding only around Ascension Island, and the Christmas Island frigatebird breeding only on Christmas Island. That limited range is directly linked to their vulnerable conservation status.
Do they ever wander outside these main areas?
Oh yes, vagrancy happens. You get occasional records of birds showing up far outside their typical ranges. Magnificent frigatebirds have turned up as far north as British Columbia and Canada, and even in the UK. An Ascension frigatebird was once recorded way up in Scotland, so individuals definitely wander sometimes.
Scotland, that's a long way from the South Atlantic. What kinds of habitats do they prefer within these huge ranges? Obviously, ocean.
Fundamentally marine, yes. They spend most of their lives over coastal and pelagic waters, the open ocean. They might forage far out at sea, patrol along coastlines, or hunt in shallow lagoons. Their foraging habitat is often dictated by where the food is, so areas of marine productivity are key.
Like upwellings.
Exactly. Ocean upwellings, where nutrient-rich deep water comes to the surface, current convergences, eddies, the edges of continental shelves. These areas tend to concentrate prey. And of course, wherever those subsurface predators like tuna are active, there might even be differences between species or sexes. Magnificent frigatebirds sometimes use coastal and reef zones more, while great frigatebirds might be more consistently oceanic.
And for resting and breeding, they need land then, right?
Absolutely. For breeding and also just for roosting at night or resting between foraging trips, they require land. Crucially, they need remote, predator-free islands or inaccessible coastal areas.
Predator-free is key.
Vital. They nest colonially. Usually in vegetation, low trees, bushes, mangroves are common choices. Specific plants like rhizophora mangroves, gabola bushes, pisonia trees, terminalia, ficus, various species depending on the location. The nests are often built anywhere from 2 to 20 feet above the ground or water, although the Christmas Island frigatebird tends to nest higher.
What if there are no trees, like on Ascension?
Good point.
Yes.
If suitable vegetation isn't available, like on parts of Ascension Island, which are quite barren, they will nest directly on the bare ground or on cliff ledges. They adapt. They generally choose nesting colony locations that offer some shelter from strong winds, and they use similar sites, trees or cliffs, just for roosting outside the breeding season.
Okay, so they wander huge distances over the ocean, but need these specific, safe island spots to come back to. What about migration? Do they undertake long, regular migrations like some other birds?
Their movement patterns are actually quite variable. It ranges from being relatively sedentary, staying near breeding colonies year-round, to undertaking extensive nomadic wandering or more directed, long-distance movements that look like migration.
So it depends.
It seems to depend on the species, the population, maybe even the age of the bird. Many breeding adults might stay relatively close to their colony, making long foraging trips out and back. But non-breeding adults, and especially immature birds, often disperse very widely.
How far do they go?
We know from banding studies and satellite telemetry that they can travel enormous distances. Great frigatebirds, banded in Hawaii, have been recovered as far away as the Philippines and Japan. Birds from Europa Island in the Mozambique Channel have traveled across the Indian Ocean to the Maldives. A magnificent frigatebird tracked after its nest failed moved 1,400 kilometers away.
Wow, thousands of kilometers.
Yeah. There was a fascinating comparative study looking at different great frigatebird populations. Birds from Europa Island undertook these really long-distance migrations across the Indian Ocean. Birds from New Caledonia in the Pacific made shorter migrations within the southwestern Pacific. And birds from the Galapagos Islands were largely resident, staying put most of the time.
So even within one species, different populations have different strategies.
Exactly. And the dispersal patterns of the young birds often mirrored the strategies of the adults in their population. It suggests their migratory or wandering behavior is quite flexible, likely influenced by environmental factors like prey distribution and the availability of offshore islands they can use for roosting during long journeys.
Do they come back to where they were born?
Yes, they generally show strong philopatry, meaning that after their years of wandering as juveniles, they typically return to their natal colony, the place where they hatched, to attempt breeding themselves for the first time.
A homing instinct. So it's maybe less like a strict migration and more like long-distance wandering for many of them, especially the non-breeders?
The distinction can be a bit blurred, especially for the non-breeding birds. Is it directed migration or opportunistic nomadic wandering? It's probably a spectrum of behaviors adapted to finding food across vast tracts of ocean.
It all comes back to efficiently covering that huge ocean environment. Okay, we've touched on conservation status. The widespread magnificent frigatebird is listed as least concern.
That's correct. According to the IUCN Red List, Frigata magnificens is least concern. Its very large range across the tropical Americas and even Cape Verde provides a buffer. Some sources even suggest its overall population trend might be increasing, although, as we said, specific local populations could still face threats, like the ones in the Galapagos.
All right, so global status is one thing, local health is another.
Precisely. But compared to the vulnerable status of the Ascension and Christmas Island species, the widespread ones are considered more secure overall at the moment.
It really highlights how important that breeding range size is for their long-term prospects.
It's a critical factor for island nesting seabirds.
This has been absolutely fascinating, learning how every aspect of the frigate bird, from its bones to its feathers to its behavior, is shaped by the demands of a life spent almost entirely on the wing over tropical oceans.
They really are extraordinary creatures.
Yeah.
Masters of the air, shaped by this unique evolutionary pressure of needing to avoid the water. That vulnerability defines them just as much as their incredible flight.
The frigate bird, a true spectacle of the tropical skies. From its incredible aerial endurance, soaring for months, to the dramatic crimson balloon displays of the males, and yes, that notorious act of piracy, these birds have truly carved a unique niche in the world's oceans.
And their sensitivity to the health of marine ecosystems, especially that link to large predators like tuna, makes them really important indicators for us to watch. They tell us stories about what's happening beneath the waves.
A fantastic summary. Their lives really do tell a story about the ocean itself. Thank you so much for sharing all this incredible detail about the frigate bird's fascinating life.
My pleasure. They're always amazing to talk about.
And thank you all for joining us on Saltwater Stories. Thank you for listening.